Hello there. Welcome back to the Cause Correct podcast with me, Rispa Wanjanjage. This is part two of a series that we are doing on myths about cause correction slash transformation slash walking into purpose that we must dispel, ideas that we romanticize about change and cause correction that we must honestly forget if we are going to cause correct effectively. I think it's important to highlight that cause correct is founded on a principle that no one is too messed up to be redeemed. And what we mean by that is, I know there are many people who have experienced life where they have had opportunities and they feel they didn't use them well, or they have failed. I mean, I think everyone at some point has gone through that. Some people just happen to have had it really hard. If you look at someone, for example, who's spent some years in drug abuse, or somebody else who's spent a bit of their years self sabotaging too much, the way they need to course correct may be a bit different from somebody else who maybe they just needed to really learn the lessons that they were learning, but they were in a good environment. So the level of how and the intensity of how what kind of process each one of us must be subjected to grow into the person that we need to become so that we can walk in the fullness of our purposes it's going to look a bit different for each one of us. So because correction, the idea is that the principle is that we can be able to pursue, we can be able to recover everything that we have lost, every moment that we have lost, every opportunity that we didn't take advantage of. Even if we don't get the exact same opportunities, we can avail ourselves the opportunity to sort of grow again and try again. All right. So, coming back now to the goal of this particular podcast. See, one of the things that we must get out of our minds is that cause correction, i.e., becoming the person you are created to be, is about you. This one was hard for me to learn, and I'm probably still in the space of really seeing how it comes into play. Um, Often, when we think about purpose, the world has sold it as a thing of serving you. You're the one who's killing it in life. You're the one who's got all the things, you're living your best life. Yeah, that is part of the process. But really, true cause correction is actually about becoming less and less and less about yourself and more about the people that you are going to serve. And what that looks like is, as an example, when you get resources, resources are not going to be just about you alone. When you develop your talents, or when you write music, as an example, the music is not for you to get fame or glory. The music is about serving others. I think I must give a context to this. I'm not exactly trying to talk about cause correction in the context of what the secular world may be selling, okay? Because I know that someone who's purely doing it to entertain people, it might matter to them the kind of glory that they get from people, the kind of praise that they get from people. But when you really realize, for example, if you're going to do work for a place like Africa, it's not going to be about you or how much fame you have. This has to be about becoming the best you possibly can in that field, because the lives of a lot of people depend on you. which is why once again the first two lessons in part one of this particular series were it is important that you must mature up into the person you need to be to serve people well. Like you just can't jump into things. I've discovered my purpose today, tomorrow you're already doing it. No, not when 10,000 people or millions of people are involved. Your era, one era from you being the person who's responsible over so many people, could mean walking an entire generation of people, a continent into error. That's a very costly mistake. I will repeat something I said previously. If you're someone who's going to be walking in God's purposes, it's not possible for you to be the exception, that God chooses you and anoints you, and somehow you step into your purpose the next day, and yet He's the same God who has sometimes subjected others to 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of being developed before they could finally walk into what they saw themselves doing. It's not about us, not when other people's destinies and lives are concerned to you. One era is so costly when there are thousands, hundreds, or tens or millions of lives associated with your calling. And by tens, I mean even 10 people. Misleading 10 people is a very high cost because 10 people means 10 families. You don't know how big or small those families are. So it's not about ourselves. And what now that means is that first, it won't be about your glory, but also then we should be, or we need to pray for grace to now for our egos to be dispelled. Like my ego has to be completely out of the equation if I'm going to become the person that God created me to be. Because correction is not just about the process itself. At some point, we do have to stop being the ones who are fed all the time and become people now who are feeding others. So, what will you be feeding others if there is error in you? Or if you think it's about yourself? So, it's not about ourselves. And I pray that you, as you listen to this, God gives you a revelation of the fact that it's not about yourself and what the journey will look like for you. But it's not about us. It is not going to be about you. So if you're still looking for glory, for praise, to feed our ego, for people to be like, oh my God, yeah, you're so famous. Nah, we ain't ready yet. Such a person is not ready yet to take up responsibility. Um, they still have a lot of being cause corrected. Then so now that's the first lesson I wanted to share in this part too. First, it's not about us, and therefore our ego must get out of the equation completely. The second lesson that I would like to share is that it's going to be easy. I feel like that is so cliche because a lot of people have said it. I've had it. I've been told. But I think my life coach earlier today, I talked with my life coach and he told me, there are some of these things in life whereby not even reading in a book is going to really make sense until you are down that path, walking that journey, and you realize for sure that it's not easy. Maybe what I mean by it is that it's not romantic. When we think of purpose, when we think, oh my God, I have course corrected, therefore I've become perfectly now, I am exactly who I'm created to be. It might, we glamorize. I think that's the word. It's not glamorous. It is not romantic. It's not glamorous at all. I think the moment of glory we see for the people that we admire is a very small part of what has landed them there and what has sustained them there. Some of the lessons we have to learn require humility and even experiencing what might feel like lessons of feeling humiliated. Okay, I realize that now humiliation is not necessarily always in front of people. You can realize how much in your head you were as you go through your growth process. For example, I was reading this book that was now talking about some of the characteristics of children is that children are unsteady. A child will start doing dishes and they start with a lot of psych, alafu 10 minutes later, they've gone to play with their friends, half dishes done, half of everything done, and they have gone. They're unsteady, they're unreliable, they cannot be trusted to do things, and that's just a child. That is how they are. So when we're coming to serve people, we do have to grow out of being unreliable people. I know for some time, I think there's even spaces I worked in organizations where I'm looking back now, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, no, no. That was completely being a child. And it's not even judgment against myself, but it's that it's humbling to realize how much I thought, yeah, I got this. I am so ready and I am doing this. I don't understand what all of you guys are telling me, or yo. We cannot be children and be entrusted with the responsibilities that require people who are mature, who are adults. Part of what it not being glamorous will look like is that it's not going to always be about comforting our feelings. Okay, let me expound on that a bit. I realize as an example when I started writing. Oh yeah, I do write just in case someone is interacting with this work or with me for the very first time here. Cause correct in and of itself is a collective of many expressions of this mission that I feel God has put in my heart concerning cause correction of individuals or the way we look at things, and eventually how do we cause correct in Africa, because I love this land, I love Africa, and it breaks my heart and it annoys me and it angers me that Africa is almost an example of what people use when they want to give examples of scorned things, all right? Things that are like a disdain. I'm not okay with that. I do not vibe with that. But I realize you cannot change a space like Africa and the things that have been running and the same ideas that have been running, the same way of doing things that have been happening all of these years, no matter how good my intentions are. Today I had a quote: even if you have good ideas must also come with respect for some of the old ideas. The old ideas do not have to work, but you cannot come with, in Kikuyu, not in Kikuyu, in Swahili, in Kenya, we say kifua. Kifua, it's like, I know everything. I'm the one who's about to change this entire continent. Y'all, let me show you where you've been wrong, baby. Nah, we must walk into these spaces with humility, with the respect, with understanding that there's a reason why some of these traditions, even if they're not necessarily good, why they have been there for long. We must allow ourselves room to be patient for our ideas to take root. Pole pole. Pole pole is like slowly by slowly, one step at a time. The person who was giving the quote about how to introduce new ideas into new spaces and having respect for them, he was saying that um, part of it is coming with an understanding that, for example, in organizations, even when you want to change the culture of an organization, you do not change it in one sitting or in one meeting. So even us, as much as yeah, we are Pan-African and we want to do excellent work for Africa, we must go at a pace where people can have enough time to not feel attacked in what they have believed in before, to acclimatize to the new thoughts that we are presenting, and for the thoughts to make sense to them, for them to own those thoughts, so that eventually you're not a one-man show trying to change a space where change cannot be effective if it's only carried out by one person. Okay? But anyway, I think that was a bit of a detour, but I think it's very still related to what I was saying, that it's not going to be like part of why it's not glamorous to change. It's because of some of the habits about ourselves we must give up. Like coming to see how much of childhood behaviors I have had, probably still do have right now, but now I'm at a place of realizing, yo, I cannot continue like this. It's very, very humbling. I think literally, in fact, God has to help you, because it's very hard to have a teachable spirit where we realize being teachable also means seeing that we were in error in some ways. One other characteristic of a child that was given, not a child like childishness, yes, but it's a child really, is that children talk a lot. They're very talkative. And my God, the person who's written the book is even like a very serious person. They said that if you want to know a fool always has many words. And that in a person's many words, there's always going to be error. There's going to be sin, there's going to be a mistake. They're going to expose themselves somewhere in a lot of speech. As someone who's created naturally, I'm talkative. This was like a blow to my ego. It was like, huh, oh God, this sounds like me. I talk a lot, even when I need or I want to tell myself that I am a listener. I don't know that I've listened that much or that well to people before, but now I realize that where we are going, it's going to be a place of balance of both. It doesn't mean do not talk. It doesn't mean what we have to say does not matter. But it also does mean that not everything we have to say or think we have to say matters. It does mean that at some point we must learn. We must learn to be quiet. Our words must be fewer. Otherwise, in the process, we're going to become or expose ourselves as fools. And there's nothing wrong with being, everyone, I think, at some point is a fool, in quotes, in terms of like every one of us at some point has to grow out of some childhood behaviors. But I think some childhood behavior is harder to accept we have, especially when we are at a certain age. Um, Let me get a bit random here and say that I've had the privilege of having someone who's a life coach being sort of like a close friend slash, is a friend. They're a mentor in my life, but it's like I get some life coach advice without having to pay for the full sessions. And they were telling me that even people in their 30s and 40s, some people are still children when they're in that age. Basically, that time is not going to make any difference if we do not deliberately allow ourselves to learn. So, question is there a place you need to cut your speech a bit, to grow, to listen, It's not possible to collaborate with people where only your ideas, only you, how grand you are, how grand the things you're going to do with your life are, with how great you are. I mean, this book was like people who are always talking about what they're doing, what they will do, the plans they have. I was like, oh, you're shouting. You are shouting in this book. Because that was so me. Right now, I'm like, even if I get an idea about things, I don't care how urgent it feels, it can wait. Let me first ruminate on those thoughts. It's hard for me now that, you know, I think many of us want to look like we are grand. Um, but if we are really going to be people who can eventually be steady and trustworthy, then even our speech has to be measured. I read of this verse, not off, I read this verse in Proverbs. I think it's 24, verse 25, or 25, verse 24, somewhere there, that a good word is like an apple dipped in gold set on a silver platter. But in the same way, words not said in the proper context are like a recipe for embarrassing moments, some of which are hard to recover from. Okay, the Bible did not say recipe for, it did not say like this recipe for embarrassing moments. No, that's my own rendition of it. But basically, there is value to words shared at the right time. So if you are being too talkative, we must observe, like, why do we feel the need to fill space with so much talk? Why do we need to do that? Why do we feel that we need to do that? So perhaps the question is to you, if you were to observe yourself, is there too much talk, vain talk? And I'm tempted to talk the opposite of it. Sometimes people say, I'm just introverted, so I stay quiet. But at the same time, even now, for someone who's an introvert, at some point they would need to step out of their comfort zone as introverts if they're going to serve people, because now it's not about them, like we have said. It's about the place, the people that you're going to serve. So the silence, the introspection of an introvert is an example, is good, but they have to observe whether it serves the moment where they are in. The last characteristic of why it's not glamorous, why cause correction is not glamorous, is that part of it includes learning that we could have other childish behaviors, such as you find yourself talking about people a lot. Um, I think I grew up in a place where gossip was always considered a bit healthy, you know, because it's a good way to cope, especially in the village. Um, I would say that I do not relate that much with gossiping, or talking about others and their failures when they are absent. So, but because I don't tend to do that often, I think that people don't. But if it's been written about, then there is a truth to it, and I've also seen it. And of course, there was a point at which I would talk about others a bit. But basically, it's that the space of maturity will require silence to learn. I love this example of a verse that was shared from the book of Acts in the Bible, Acts chapter 2, where the description of the old church, like the original church, the first Christians, was that they would fellowship with one another, worshiping the Lord, fasting with each other, and then the Holy Ghost said, and then the Holy Spirit said. So they weren't talking about each other, they weren't talking about themselves, the one speaking foolishly or vainly or trying to fill every moment with a joke. I've been caught up in that where I want to constantly feel like I'm giving jokes or being funny, but it's not necessary all the time. Not every moment is going to be a moment where it's all jokes and being funny. There has to be a space of more maturity than that, indeed. So this is just to summarize. Like, if you find yourself talking about others, honestly, I don't relate with that absolutely at all. So I don't even think I've explained this point very well. But at least the first two, that kind of the behavior of childishness that I realized, this one, I see it in my life and I want to overcome vain talking, always talking about ourselves and, you know, all this super grandness about who we are. It has to go. Growth is not glamorous. That's the point. So do not think it will be romantic. Do not romanticize it because you are going to be heartbroken, honestly. When it comes down to it, you're going to be very heartbroken when you realize that it's not glamorous, it's not romantic. It will be facing hard truths about ourselves. It will be seeing that we do not take enough time to let things marinate, to let things develop. Like someone asked me, so what's your purpose? I have an idea. But they were like, okay, so but what form is there a structure to it? Is there like how what's the vehicle of how you're going to execute that purpose? And you find you can't answer those questions, but yet you want to, for example, leave the places where you work and go into a differently, like, and pursue your purpose alone. No, there's a space for other people growing you, but there's another space where we ourselves have to grow, and there's just no two way to saying it. Growth is not romantic because correction isn't glamorous. It's a place of seeing how muddy we are. It's a place of sometimes coming into contact with how much we need to grow, to develop, to take a backseat. It's accepting that maybe even the glamour of what we thought our purposes might look like isn't going to be coming anytime soon, maybe not in the next 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, because in this entire time our self needs to die so that by the time we are showing up we're able to serve God's people with humility and can continue listening to God because we know it's not about us. So those are the lessons I have learned about the myths about growth, myths about course correction that we must dispel, that we must forget, that we must allow ourselves to get out of if we are going to course correct. Because once again, course correction, the goal is not for you to course correct alone. It's what course correction allows you to become. Course correction is an example for someone, let's say maybe for me, it means that it allows me that when I have course corrected, when I've corrected, my mind is now more mature, my perspective is more mature, the way that I relate with people, there's more maturity to that. It means that then I can be entrusted with responsibility over the lives of many, and I can take that seriously, all right? It means I can keep my ego out of the window, out of the door. It means that I would be aware how much one error on my side, if I am going to be addressing people, one error on my side could mislead a lot of people. So this will not be for my praise. It's not like there may not be visibility involved in our purposes. There might be, there could be, there will be for some of the purposes that um we have. If you're going to serve many people, it's almost impossible that you're going to be fully hidden. But when you get onto that platform? Will it get to our heads? Will we think it's about us? Um, so those are the lessons that I've been learning. It's not an event either. So we have to develop new standards and structures of measuring whether we are succeed, how our success looks like. Because now it's not about 844 or a graduation ceremony. There's no more graduation. At some point, graduations in life end. So now it has to become about collecting evidence to ourselves that we are living the way God has called us to. Um, I think the one last one I would share, I will just do it in a completely different part and I may call it a whole different name. So we will just say that this series has ended here on some of the myths about growth, change, cause correction that we must get out of our minds if we are going to cause correct effectively, i.e., that at the end of our processes of correcting who we are, we can be people who are accurately positioned to serve others. My name is Rispa Wanjanjage. This is the Cause Correct podcast, and I'm very, very glad to be your host. I look forward to hosting you guys in the next episode where we will talk about, can we really put God out of the equation in cause correction, in change in life, in transformation? Is it possible? Should we allow that? It's possible. It could be. I don't know. We'll discover. So make sure that you are tuned in. If this has blessed you, please subscribe. Please leave a comment. If you have suggestions on how we can improve, please do that. Although I'm very cognizant that I will be improving, that we do need to improve, like how we record. I'm really gonna get down to that. So, in the meantime, I truly appreciate you for indulging me as I am right now recording videos for YouTube on landscape. Like, who does that? Not landscape. This is portrait here on portrait mode instead of landscape. I'm working to see how I can do it even better. But in the meantime, I encourage you, start your course correction journey where you are with the skills that you have, with what you know. In the meantime, as much as it's not glamorous, you're not going to learn anything if you do not put yourself out there in the first place. Yeah, you're not going to learn, for example, to speak a bit more slowly so that people can learn and hear what you're saying, unless you start maybe speaking in public and you realize, oh, I need to slow down. Okay, so it's not glamorous, but also do not hide from the process, um because at the end of the day, what will count is whether you did something, is whether you were the man in the arena. So put yourself there, encourage yourself to be out there, share with a friend. I truly appreciate your time. May God bless you and keep you, and see you in the next episode. Bye.